it's Natasha.
And Khalil.
And we are the co-hosts of
WokeNFree.
Thank you for tuning in to our 91st episode of WokeNFree. If you've been tuning in every week for WokeNFree Wednesday, you know that WokeNFree is all about being real and honest with each other and you. We talk about everything and anything important to us, you, the world, and nothing is off the table. This week we're talking all about whether the war on drugs is a real thing. But before we dive deep into the subject, a couple of questions to ask you. Y'all know the deal. First, have you subscribed to WokeNFree on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and all the other platforms we're on, especially via email? Guys, go to WokeNFree.com and subscribe via email. That way you'll get notification for all our upcoming episodes as they air. And you can also quickly share with all your friends and family. Next, have you shared an episode? If not, if you are as passionate and riveted as we are on this subject, and you'll shortly see why, this is the episode to share. I think that the war on drugs is something that has been plaguing several generations, and we currently have our thoughts and feelings on it, I'm sure as you as well. So share. Let's have an open dialogue about what this whole war on drugs is all about. Next, have you hollered at us on social media? If you want to share breaking news or information that's going on in your life, have collaboration ideas, you can always find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and even YouTube at WokeNFree. Then lastly, have you reviewed the show? Y'all know podcasts are all about the feedback. We want to know what you think. So please go on iTunes, review the show. Go on Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, YouTube, any of the platforms we're on, and review away.
Each week we like to share a little bit about us before we dive into the topic for the episode. Last week we shared, if you have the urge to write, which do you choose, a diary or a blog? This week we are sharing, when you take a break from a book, do you bookmark or dog ear the page you were on?
Really deep stuff here, Khalil.
It was unexpected for you.
Amazing.
You love it when you get to share these type of details.
Exactly. I know everyone's like on the edge of their chair, eagerly awaiting the answer.
Yeah.
So
they don't know this about you.
Yes, exactly. So what do I like to do? I like bookmarks. I love shopping. So I love to buy things, and I love buying bookmarks. Shout out to Twilight and my Twilight bookmarks that I have. And I have Hunger Games bookmarks and Divergent bookmarks. Like I love bookmarks, A, because it's another thing to buy, but B, books have feelings, and I don't want to dog ear the pages. I mean, I am an offender with the highlighter, and I do apologize for that. But I try to not destroy books completely, and I feel like earmarking the pages can potentially even make it break. I've seen that happen. I've even had that happen to me. So use a bookmark. Be kind to your books.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I hate destroying books, so I definitely have to use the bookmark instead of marking up the book and having all the pages like crinkled and stuff.
Definitely.
I like the books to look pristine, and I wouldn't dare ruin that. I mean, that's messed up. How you doing that to the book?
We are not a part of the Fahrenheit 9/11 nation.
Destroying books,
yeah,
that's crazy.
None of that.
Now we'll just jump into it. What is the war on drugs all about?
Oh, gosh. So it's like a really interesting breakdown politically, historically, and everything in between. Let's go by kind of what I found on drugpolicy.org. So the early stages of drug prohibition. So there were many current, obviously illegal drugs like marijuana, opium, coke, psychedelics, all of those things. They've been used for thousands of years for medical and spiritual purposes. Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
But, the first anti-opium laws were in the 1870s. That was directed at Chinese immigrants. The first anti-cocaine laws were in the early 1900s, directed at black men in the South. The first anti-marijuana laws in the Midwest and Southwest in the 1910s and 20s were directed at Mexican migrants and Mexican Americans. And also now then if you come a little bit closer in time with like the Nixon and generation gap, in the 1960s, the drugs became kind of a symbol of youthful rebellion, social upheaval, and political dissent. So the government halted scientific research to evaluate their medical safety and efficacy. So then in June 1971, President Nixon declared a war on drugs. So I think that's specifically when that language started circulating in our society. And he dramatically increased the size and presence of federal drug control agencies, pushed through measures such as mandatory sentencing and no-knock warrants. Then,
that's crazy.
Yes. And then in 1972, the commission unanimously recommended decriminalizing the possession and distribution of marijuana for personal uses. However, Nixon ignored the report and rejected its recommendations. And then within just a few years, though the tide had shifted, proposals to decriminalize marijuana were abandoned as parents became increasingly concerned about high rates of teen marijuana use. And marijuana was ultimately caught up in a broader cultural backlash against the perceived permissiveness of the 1970s. Then if you go to like the 1980s and 1990s, where it's called, the article has it as drug hysteria and skyrocketing incarceration rates, the presidency of Ronald Reagan marked the start of a long period of skyrocketing rates of incarceration, largely thanks to his unprecedented expansion on the drug war.
Wow.
It's quite staggering, really. The number of people behind bars for nonviolent drug law offenses increased from 50,000 in 1980 to over 400,000 in 1997. So, guys, 50,000 to 400,000 is a huge leap. And the increasingly harsh drug policies also, just note, blocked the expansion of syringe access programs and other harm reduction policies to reduce the rapid spread of HIV/AIDS. So it wasn't even helpful fully because they were going so hard on the drugs, but then that actually got in the way of like some HIV prevention work, so that's not so good. Then there's so much more information on this, guys. Okay, so here in 1985, the proportion of Americans polled who saw drug abuse as the nation's number one problem was only 2 to 6%. So in 1985, very few people thought like drugs was a big issue. However, the figure grew through the remainder of the 1980s until in September 1989, it reached a remarkable 64%, one of the most intense fixations by the American public on any issue in polling history at that time. And then within less than a year, however, the figure plummeted to less than 10% as the media lost interest. Interesting. So the draconian policies enacted during the hysteria remained, however, and continued to result in escalating levels of arrest and incarceration. So meaning it wasn't really raved about in the media, but people were still getting incarcerated like crazy for this whole situation. And then President Bill Clinton advocated for treatment instead of incarceration during his 1992 presidential campaign. After his first few months in the White House, he reverted to the drug war strategies of his Republican predecessors by continuing to escalate the drug war. Notoriously, Clinton rejected a U.S. Sentencing Commission recommendation to eliminate the disparity between crack and powder cocaine sentences.
Do the same. They're both drugs.
Interesting.
Wow.
And so much information. And then, so then we have then the new millennium and the pendulum shifts slowly towards sensible drug policy. So then George W. Bush arrived in the White House as the drug war was running out of steam, yet he allocated more money than ever to it. His drug czar, John Walters, zealously focused on marijuana and launched a major campaign to promote student drug testing. While rates of illicit drug use remained constant, overdose facilities rose rapidly. And then we have marijuana reform has gained unprecedented momentum throughout the Americas. So we have Alaska, California, Colorado, Nevada, Oregon, Maine, Massachusetts, Washington State, Washington, D.C. have legalized marijuana for adults. In December 2013, Uruguay became the first country in the world to legally regulate marijuana. In Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau plans legalize marijuana for adults by 2018. So I'm not sure if he actually did that or not, but
I think so.
I believe, it is legal
in Canada, yeah.
True that. And then, now the administration is threatening to go backwards with, who is in president, because he's calling for a wall to keep drugs out of the country. And Attorney General Jeff Sessions made it clear that he does not support the sovereignty of states to legalize marijuana and believes good people don't smoke marijuana. So,
that statement means it's neither here nor there.
So
it's not based on anything.
Ultimately, we have, so it seems like in the history, and there's a lot more to be discussed on that, and all links that we share, you guys can find in the episode at WokeNFree.com. But however, it seemed like people have used legislation and law to regulate drugs, not necessarily based on science or even factual issues, but more like just these beliefs, like good people, right, smoke marijuana, and we want to go after certain people from different backgrounds
from the history.
and criminalize, and because, it's not happenstance why America is one of the highest rates of incarceration in the entire world, right? So it seems like there are other issues driving this quote-unquote war on drugs. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I saw some stuff on history.com. It basically, I mean, you definitely went through the history on the war on drugs, so I'm not going to go over that, but just to jump back to the beginning, it's interesting how the legislation was placed against certain groups of people, first starting with the Chinese, then starting with Black Americans, then with Mexicans that coming over here. So it seems like these drug laws were just created for a simple reason of trying to like harm and segregate the people from society and used to lock them up in prisons, which contributed to that incarceration rate going sky high.
Like Akon says, locked up.
And then we can't like let Bill Clinton escape that. What he did, and I didn't realize that he had done a quick 360 on there, because people, they rarely talk about that he was definitely for like rehabilitation during his campaigning, but then he never actually went forward with that, so he just reneged on what he said he was going to do. So I think that's like something that we should definitely not overlook. Like that's crazy.
Politics are dirty. We all know that.
So that's definitely some good history that you dropped on what the war on drugs is really about.
It's really, I think, based on a lot of like fear, right? Because like there are even people and information, we can add that to the repertoire if people are interested, put it in the comments, guys. Not all drugs are bad, right? There are some benefits for certain types of use, and I think that to just outlandishly say, we should just block, I think might be too short-sighted and might be costing us too much by us behaving this way.
Yeah, it should be just like they did with tobacco. They need to have like research that shows these are effects that can come from using the drugs.
I mean, there's certain drugs like opiates and cocaine and heroin. But
shouldn't research still? We should still do the research and say after using cocaine for 2 days. But what happens after using it for 2 days? How addictive is it? Just stuff like that. Things like that should just be readily available.
Studies on that. I'm not sure if they're shared with the public.
There should be an FDA stated thing on this is in general. This is what it causes people. This is what happens.
Absolutely.
And it should just be put out there so we know. Like after this amount of years, you may get this, and then even how they do those commercials on tobacco, do it on all the other drugs. Do it on the opioids. Let people know these are harmful effects.
Remember those commercials? Your brain on drugs, and it's splatter an egg. And, oh God.
Yeah, I mean they were being extreme, but
that's not helpful.
Not to be as extreme. You can be realistic and say what happens after using these. Put some information out there. Put some funding into that instead of the war on drugs. How about you fund some social media campaigns that say people don't do the drugs? The reason it affects them.
And have more real accounting. I think I've been seeing more and more commercials about people who have had very harmful physical effects of smoking. Get more people to talk about the methadone addiction and all of these things, and let's just have an open dialogue. I think we have to stop criminalizing the conversation and criminalizing people because it doesn't provide treatment. It's not healing. And also, what is driving people to do these drugs, right? They're not just, oh my God, I walked out my door and I'm now addicted to heroin. Like, something is happening why people are turning to drugs. How about we work on that, not just, go to prison, because it doesn't make any sense. But ultimately, what would you say is the answer? So is the war on drugs a real thing?
I would say it's not. It seems like it's like part of a political objective, actually. It's the war on drugs, the actual phrase, it just comes from the government. They came up with that. It wasn't something that the citizens proposed. Just politicians came about and started saying that. As you said, only 2% of people were even thought it was an issue. It's definitely politicians just found that was a way to, get these underlying objectives of other people's like what do you call it? Like, I would say like kind of like prejudices and things that people had for others. I think that's what it was. They were really trying to find a way that they could deal with those prejudices, and they made this term so it didn't seem like they were just doing it against a certain group of people. So I don't think the war on drugs is actually the real thing. I think the prejudice and racism is a real thing, and that, political undermining and stuff is what's really going on, using the war on drugs as a back end to get what you really want, like incarcerating minorities. That it helps with that. It looks like it helps with that. I mean, that's one thing you could say. It's not really a war on drugs. It's a war on minorities and how to lock them up. That's what it seems like. I mean, the numbers show that. Yeah. Are we actually stopping the drug trade? I mean, the drug trade is still growing. It's still a growing industry. The illegal drug trade.
Is not going to do anything about that. So.
Yeah. And I think the real reason marijuana is being legalized is, the government wants a hand in the taxes.
Exactly. They want
wait a minute, this marijuana industry is growing. Let's not leave that on the table. We can get our foot in that.
Exactly. So there's actually even more history, guys, that is shared on History.com, and it goes through some very interesting facts. So, like, in 1961, the CIA conspired with mobsters in Miami to assassinate Castro, whose revolution had put an end to the lucrative drug and vice networks operating on the island. Although the CIA planned Bay of Pigs invasion failed, many of the agency's Cuban assets survived, and after making their way back to Miami, they turned southern Florida into an early epicenter of drug smuggling and drug-related violence. I remember hearing about that for sure.
Oh, all right.
And then CIA also simultaneously helped introduce LSD to the American populace via clandestine programs that dosed countless citizens, all part of a Cold War mind control operation titled MK Ultra.
Wow.
And then in Southeast Asia, the CIA teamed up with Laotian General Vang Pao to help make Laos the world's top exporter of heroin. By the time Nixon became racketing down U.S. troop presence in Vietnam to focus on the war on drugs, more troops were dying of heroin overdoses than actual combat, an epidemic that quickly found its way to the streets of urban America.
All right.
Then a decade later, as a result of turning a blind eye to cocaine smugglers, funding the CIA's illegal war against communist Satanists in Nicaragua, the CIA unwittingly helped unleash a nationwide crack cocaine epidemic. Most notably, cocaine kingpin freeway Ricky Ross was able to take his South Central LA-based crack businesses nationwide thanks to his access to a cheap supply of coke from politically connected Nicaraguan, I can't say that word, suppliers, and veteran drug agents, including Phil Jordan, former director of the DEA's El Paso Intelligence Center, EPIC, says they repeatedly called off cases involving CIA-tied drug rings. So
nice, CIA.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you're really working on.
Yeah, so it's interesting. The CIA's collusion with anti-communist drug smugglers beginning in the 1960s played a direct role in the drug epidemic of the 80s that was used to justify President Reagan's 1986 crime bill. The law introduced harsh mandatory sentencing for non-violent drug offenders, the legacy of which we are still dealing with today.
Collusion.
Interesting, 1986, that happened again. The world began in 86. Guys.
Yeah.
We talked about, again, President Clinton's expansion on Reagan's drug war by militarizing the nation's police forces and introducing mandatory minimum sentencing. Even though President Obama tried to revise this policy shortly before leaving office, President Trump seems to intend on doubling down on the war on drugs, like I mentioned earlier. And when he recently visited Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte to the White House, he congratulated him for sending police death squads into the streets to kill drug dealers and addicts.
Wow.
Many countries have the problem. We have a problem. But what a great job you were doing. And I just wanted to call and tell you that, Trump reportedly said.
Wow, he was just killing citizens? That's like insane. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I think I heard about
I didn't hear about that
well.
one.
And
wow.
then, as a nation, this just summarizing in the article, we are tired of the drug war's endless cycle of crime, political corruption, mass incarceration, and mayhem, particularly in Mexico, much of which is a war zone, while north of the border we are mirrored in a highly politicized hysteria over immigration and border security. The war on drugs has already cost U.S. taxpayers more than $1 trillion, and our nation's jails, prisons, and hospitals now overflow with the ranks of its combatants and victims. Stakes couldn't be higher for America, and this is not a war per se, but it seems more like a crisis. So my answer would be no, the war on drugs is not a real thing. It has been, it seems like a self-inflicted symptom that American government instituted and colluded with instituting so that we could put more money behind it and support people who want to go out and kill and harm and
they set up the drug rings. So you're saying the CIA was
essentially
they were helping to set it up.
Yeah, and I think that this is just touching the surface, guys. If
and this
you
is from history.com.
Yeah, but this is from history.com.
It's not from.
So I mean, it sounds
they did their research.
It sounds like a conspiracy, to be honest, but I mean,
I know it sounds like a conspiracy, but it's not.
History.com would.
No, they don't just put on. They don't just put on random stuff like this is
and
stuff
I've heard
that's
that.
been
We've
verified.
watched certain movies.
We know that they've done that before. They've helped out drug kingpins. Because you know what they've done?
Yeah.
They used those drug kingpins to overthrow the current leaders of the country, and then they supplied them with weapons and drugs, whatever they needed to get the to get the power to take over the country. So drugs was another means of doing that because drugs equals money.
Yeah.
So that makes sense then that they use that as a means.
I mean, $1 trillion. That's a lot of dough. No pun intended.
Meanwhile, we still have college kids that are in super huge amount of debts, but we have this $1 trillion that are going towards drugs.
I'm not a college kid, but I am in a ton of debt, and yes, that plight is real.
That is very interesting.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Very interesting. We can spend $1 trillion on that, and we still have a deficit. It's very funny. Very funny. Now, well, with that, I mean, this question seems pretty easy, but is the war on drugs effective?
No. Right? So if you look at LagunaTreatment.com, they have a statement that they talk about kind of the war on drugs. And in 2010, NBC News wrote that the war on drugs has met none of its goals, right? Specifically mentioning the widespread of illegal substances, the rampant violence and crime, and then talking about how, the government never took a big picture approach to the problem, and the focus has only been on the arresting of drug dealers and not enough on the treatment, on the addiction that made the drug dealing such a lucrative business. And, there's been like $33 billion in domestic marketing around this, right? So such as Nancy Reagan's Just Say No campaign. While the campaign did contribute to a drop in rates of teenage drug use, it also was criticized for reducing a multifaceted public health crisis to nothing more than a slogan, right? There's been $20 billion to counter and combat drug cartels on our own turf. The United States spent $6 billion to break up operations in Colombia. In response, the trafficking moved to Mexico, leading to the Mexican government being unable to control the organized crime syndicates in their own country. And there's been $49 billion to fund law enforcement and border control missions on the southern border. This just covers just under 2,000 miles from California to Texas. It entails providing resources for patrols, sniffer dogs, checkpoints, cameras, motion detectors, heat sensors, drone aircraft, and over 1,000 miles of steel beam, concrete walls, and heavy mesh along the border. Nonetheless, 330 tons of cocaine, 20 tons of heroin, and 110 tons of methamphetamines that are sold in America every day, which are consumed by 25 million Americans, are mostly smuggled over the Mexican border. There's been $121 billion to arrest more than 37 million drug offenders for low-level nonviolent crime and $400 billion to process them in federal prisons. It's just a lot of dough, a lot of cash, and the problem is still here. So ultimately, it doesn't seem effective then.
Yeah, it's definitely tackling the wrong side of the fence. Shouldn't you, like you mentioned it in that CNBC or the NBC News, why don't you deal with the users? Because if people aren't using, then the market goes away.
Exactly.
Like, if you really want to tackle a problem, like, think about it. Just get rid of the people that are
If no one wants to buy drugs, then no one can sell it.
Then that's it, right? You don't have to set up anything.
Yeah. It's about treating
people don't want it anymore.
Giving people, obviously, whatever they're missing that they're turning to drugs for. But instead, we criminalize and work on the imprisonment piece of it, but it's more about working on, the treatment. Yeah,
that would make sense. And I think it's just effective at keeping racism alive. A Vice article actually shared some startling statistics from the federal government itself. And it said that African Americans and Hispanics are still prosecuted far more frequently than white people for nearly every type of drug crime. On the 19,766 total federal drug cases in 2016, 50% of offenders were Hispanic, 23.6% were black, 22.8% were white, and 3% were classified as others. Those stats are relative to an overall American population that is 77% white, 13% black, and 17% Hispanic. So remember, 77% of white people, and the 50% of offenders, or actually, it was like over 70% is minorities being prosecuted for the crimes. The research has consistently shown that white people are actually more likely than African Americans and Hispanics to sell drugs, and about as likely to consume them, but they're still arrested and prosecuted less often than people of color. Higher arrest and incarceration rates for African Americans and Latinos are not reflective of increased prevalence of drug use or sales in these communities, but rather of a law enforcement focus on urban areas, on lower income communities, and on communities of color, as well as inequitable treatment by the criminal justice system, according to the Drug Policy Alliance. So we see that these communities are being targeted. It's not that these communities are the ones that are committing any of the drug crimes. It's just that's all they target. They go after the low income. It's like it's an easy thing. They don't have lawyers, right? Try going after someone who has lots of money and a lawyer that can tangle you up in court for years. Or you can just go after somebody on the street who doesn't even know their legal rights. That's like an easy win for the prosecutor, and it's an easy win for the officer who's catching the drug person, the person selling drugs or using drugs.
Absolutely.
Now, what do you think are some real solutions for the drug problem in America?
So I think it's a multifaceted solution that would have to be put in place, and it would really have to be put in place by the people who started this. Get to life, guys. It would not be attached to our criminal justice system, but would be focused on mental health treatment and support, and also preventative care, right? Like you said, if you can't sell drugs to no one who buys it. How about we make people happier, more fulfilled, more satisfied, more supported? That way they don't turn to drugs, because what do drugs do? They numb and they take the pain away. And we all are broken. Deal with it. You're broken. I'm broken. We're all broken. Some of us deal with our brokenness differently. Get with it.
Yeah, come on now.
Also, guys, and we're not talking all about this, but really poverty, right? It's not everybody who's doing this, but, I know there's a segment of our society who are rich who are doing this, but there's also a large segment of poor people that are doing this because, again, you're hungry, so you can forget about your hungerness by doing drugs. You can, there's a lot going on.
Or you can pay for food by selling drugs.
By selling drugs, stuff like that. Job support, If you've ever been convicted of a crime, you know that it's very difficult then to get another job in our society. So what do? Join the drug ring and sell drugs. How about we give people second chances, third chances, and employ former convicts, because just because you made one mistake and or didn't make a mistake but have this blip on your record doesn't mean you're not entitled to a life of worthiness and joy and fulfillment. So we got to provide more job support. We also have to have more family services support. There's a lot of broken families and people getting tied up with this drug stuff because they're trying to feed their children. It's it's crazy. And also, like this conversation, let's have an open dialogue and talk about this in media. Let's talk about this on more podcasts. Let's talk about this on television. Let's stop talking about someone in the White House. Let's actually talk about real shit that can be dealt with. How about them apples?
Yeah, that'd definitely be nice. I also think that we should have some new federal regulations, like making marijuana illegal in all 50 states.
Yeah.
Come on, there's worse drugs out there that are legal.
Yeah.
So let's get it together. Marijuana should be legal, just like alcohol is legal.
Absolutely.
It should be
and
the same thing.
Out of it, guys. Do your business.
You can do all that. That's fine with me. And then I think that pharmacies, I don't know if they do it now, but I think they should accept unnecessary prescription drugs. So, like if you're giving drugs by your doctor, you're giving some opioids to handle the pain. When you're finished, what do you do with those drugs? They say sell it. I mean, they say throw it out, but they said sell it. That'd be bad. Yeah, that'd be messing up. You're not a pharmacy. Don't do that. But they say just throw it out. But I think that these places should accept the drugs. Like, you should just bring it back and recycle it. That makes more sense.
Get more drugs out of our home.
Yeah, because throwing it out, I don't think people are going to do that. They're going to be like, really? Should I do it? Do I need it? But if you say, when you're done with this, just return
Give it back and you get a credit, some type of incentive.
There you go. Well, you can incentivize it. There you go. So that'd be a way that people would actually do it. That makes more sense. And then I think that they should offer activities in local communities to kind of like give people natural adrenaline rushes.
Absolutely.
And like, this is funded by the community. Since we spend trillions of dollars on the drug war, I think there's money that could go back into the community and offer things like dirt bike racing, cycling classes, or other activities.
Absolutely.
I mean, think about it.
Painting,
crocheting. People always like, I don't want to pay for that with my tax dollars. Well, your tax dollars are being wasted on something that is doing nothing. Like, literally.
You make a good point. They should be free. That way, there's no
barrier to free, no barrier to entry. And it's easy to do because let's just reduce it. We don't have to stop the war on drugs immediately right now. But what we can do is let's just take $50 million and then redistribute that for these activities.
For community programs.
And I'm saying that number, but look, we could take a small amount of the money that we're using now towards nothing and use it for something, and let's see what happens. Let's see if those
and that would also increase jobs because you'd have to hire instructors for all of those courses.
Yeah, you can do that.
So people would get more jobs out of this. We would have more community activities, so it would build stronger communities, which hopefully would reduce crime in communities. It would have a wonderful.
It'd be a widespread effect.
Yeah,
since the money's,
for sure.
We see the money's there now. It's not a question of who's paying for it.
Where's the money coming from?
We're already throwing our money in the trash. So let's throw it somewhere else.
We're doing worse than burning books. We're burning cash.
Yeah.
That's wild.
I think we definitely need to think about some of these things I said. And then also, I think we need to severely restrict this opioid manufacturing and distribution.
Not helping us. Just stop it.
I don't think we need as much drugs as we're producing and giving out.
Absolutely.
It's not needed.
No, people want to get paid, and I get that, but we got to get paid the right way. Let's do something that
maybe you can do yoga classes.
Let's have more yoga.
Instead of giving out drugs, let's do something else.
Classes. Let's have hiking.
There's other ways to heal your body.
Tour the countries. Have more tours. Get people traveling. Make money a healthier, more productive way. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And it's that time. Here we go, yo. Here we go, yo. So what's the scenario? It's scenario time. Scenario 1. Tatiana is an undercover narc, a federal agent of the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives Agency, or ATF, who just discovered that her childhood friend is knee-deep in the sale of the prescription drug game. Should she warn her friend of the consequences she faces, or just serve her justice as the U.S. government sees fit?
Ooh, that's a really hard question for me, because I'm all about tattletaling. I'm all about that. I'm not from the hood. I'm like, tell the truth, live your truth, tell
Especially
the truth.
when it's your job, right?
Yeah. I'm all about telling the truth all day, every day. I don't have no time for this nonsense. But this is, friend. This is like an important friend or
yeah, it's like a childhood best friend she had.
Oh, Jesus.
Or has.
I mean, I don't see. So my question is, I don't know what the protocols are from her employee handbook. I don't know if she would be legally at issue if she didn't just report her regardless of whether she warned. If she had the opportunity to warn her before having to bring her in or she might be
I mean, is she allowed to?
I don't know if she's
tip her off that.
That might put her job and her her career at risk. So
because remember, she's undercover, so people don't know. Her friend doesn't even know. She takes her job seriously.
There's too many unknown here, so my bet would be to follow protocol, even if it means having to arrest and bring in her friend because her friend decided to make these poor choices. And at the end of the day, if she likes her job and she wants to do her job well and not,
they pay well.
Then she needs to follow protocol, and even if it means destroying her friend's life. Yeah. Don't tell me secrets, y'all.
Wow.
No, I'm kidding. I'm very confidential, and I love to keep people's information confidential, but I also like whistleblowing. So when there's crap that needs to be uncovered, hello, it's called WokeNFree for a reason. You better be woke and free of lies and deception. Change the narrative. # change the narrative.
All right, fair enough.
Your thoughts?
Now, I don't know what the protocol is, but
yeah.
I don't think she can't go to her. I don't think she can just go to her friend and tip her off.
Herself, yeah, like
she can't tip her friend off that with who she is and all that. What I would think she could do is, I think that she should ask her superior if she could be relieved from the case, maybe, because she could say she has like a ulterior interest in this, or because she knows the person.
They would say arrest your friend and
you
have
think
McDonald's
so? No, but they're gonna. But they might think she's not gonna handle the case as well as she could. Like, could she? Yeah, like that's what I'm saying in terms of that.
That might be a helpful thing, but
I would think she needs to go by that.
Report her friend.
Well, yeah. Well, in fact she's doing that when she goes to the superior and tells like, hey, I know that person. Then they're like, oh yeah, all right. So you don't have to. Hopefully he can take you off the case because he knows you're not going to put you all to it. You know?
Sure.
You're not going to be all in the case. You're not going to look at every detail. You might mess up with paperwork or something. Something might happen. You might not be on your P's and Q's. So maybe you'll get off that case. So I think go to your superior.
You won't have to bust into her home and actually arrest her.
In front of the family, and then your other friends are there.
Because she's undercover, so they couldn't.
Well, that wouldn't happen anyway. She's undercover. I think that'd be at the end when once the case is like finished. But she shouldn't even
that is a rough question.
Doing that. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Go to your superior, guys.
Definitely. Follow protocol, guys. Yeah.
For protocol comes first, and talk to see what you can do in that case. But you can't talk to your friend, unfortunately, because she's involved in this.
She can't. She would narc on
activities.
She can't narc on
herself. She's involved in illicit activities. I'm sorry. I mean, that's
make good choices. Live a good life. If you live a good life, you don't have to worry about it. That's what I don't understand with people. Live well.
Yes, but sometimes the alternative though is too easy to go to the legal life. Like you just said, when you're not given a second chance.
We don't have yoga, and we don't have.
Well, there's other things, and we don't have opportunities available that they can just do.
Like a skate park. We need more. Yeah, we
everything.
Do.
Every community needs
to be
every community, not just some. Because you go to some place and it's like, that's cool.
Fabulous. Hello,
they have a skate park.
To the domain.
They have their own little yoga zone. They have arcades. I mean,
all communities need to be leveled up.
Yeah, you got to have some activities in all communities at least. Come on, that'd be more sensible. That'd have more sense,
Absolutely.
All communities have some equality. Scenario 2. Amanda and Katie are fed up with how drugs are impacting the community around them. They would like to do a protest demanding more laws to combat the drug problem, but they are not sure if they should protest in their community, which is a rich suburban town, or the big city where the statistics show that more drug crimes are being committed. Which area should they choose to protest in?
Oh, interesting. So even though I am a lawyer by trade, I'm actually not a fan of necessarily protest. And I know that sounds like, what, Natasha, you're also a feminist? And yeah, I'm all about that, share your Me Too's and all of that. But I don't know how effective protests are because I see people yelling and in the street with their signs. But does it really turn into legislation? Does it really effectuate change? I'm more of what I have seen to what it seems like is with lobbyists and people who use money essentially to get things done. I think it probably makes sense, especially since you're saying that they're from a more rich suburban town, to put on a fundraiser and set a goal of how much they want to raise to then maybe create a community center in the poorer neighborhood. I think that to me seems like it would make more sense than just going up in the street, whether you do it with the rich people or do it with the poor people. Yeah. I don't see how protests really effectuate change. I mean, I know they used to with the civil rights movement, and it really kind of sparked things, but nowadays with social media, with influencers, with things like that, I think you might want to use other tactics to effectuate the change that you want. How about you?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I say they shouldn't protest in either place. I don't think that's going to help, to be honest. And you're kind of like what you said, that maybe they should form a political action committee, as so many people do. They put these funds together to actually get things done, and they go right to their local leaders,
legislators, and their senators,
who actually can make an actual change. They go directly to them,
and support their campaign campaign,
at a
that
local
next
level.
local campaign, because then they're more likely to do that. And unfortunately, you don't want to say, you'll scrub my back if I scrub your back. But a lot of politicians, that's how it works. So, I think money is really the name of the game, as it normally is in this frickin' world, in this country. So you got to use your cash, ladies.
That's the way to go. Scenario 3. Tara feels the war on drugs has just cost her district millions in wasted funds, putting people in prison while depleting funding for the local schools and food pantry. Should she vent her frustration on social media, or is there something better she can do to change where her hard-earned tax dollars are spent?
So first of all, I believe social media is a wonderful tool. Obviously, we love it. You, hopefully, WokeNFree Nation, love it. Is it something without fault? No. There's good and bad to everything in this world. I think social media sometimes gets a bad rap just because people don't know how to really put it in context of all the things happening in the world. But social media isn't mydiary.com. You have a journal, go write in it. So I'm not a fan of going to social media for venting. I am a fan of open dialogue. I am a fan of starting conversations, even if it's raw, even if it's really vulnerable. But I don't believe, F you and I ain't doing it. It's not going to put you in a good light, and that stuff lasts forever on the internet. So
True.
I think she has to figure out, with her frustration, what would be the best way to attack the funds being put against people in prison. So would it be petitioning local legislators to have a sit down and have some type of community event where they talk about the stats and what has been the effect in our society of putting these people in prison? If they go to prison, does it somehow better our communities? Does it somehow better the person in prison? The answer is likely no across all fronts. But let's have the conversation. Also, what would be her solutions, right? If she is so frustrated, what is the solution? We have to be solution focused. So it's not an easy question. She probably needs to team up with some other people, maybe use social media to figure out what are other change agents she could work with and create some type of coalition and work on this. But don't just get up on here and start cussing out people on Facebook or Instagram. That's crazy. And it's not going to do anything.
Yeah, well, that's definitely some good advice for how to treat social media. Yeah, I think she should be on social media, since just from this scenario, it seems like that's what she's into. But I wouldn't do the venting. Maybe she should actually just reach out to the legislators, because most of them have social media pages, and she can actually contact them directly and ask for certain actions and ask to see some oversight on certain things as well. I mean, she needs to just talk to them. They are there, and I do believe they respond eventually. So contact all your local people in the community. Yeah. And then you can even go to the federal government, because they have pages too. I don't know how much response you're going to get there, but you can leave stuff on their feed as well. So, just put stuff there. I don't think just venting on your own page is going to do much, to be honest. But going to their other pages and actually letting them know in the community how you feel, I think that's a better way to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I know that there's been some kind of hoo-ha stuff on social media about how Kim Kardashian didn't really release these 17 people from prison, these people of color, but that really this other attorneys have done it. I haven't fully investigated, so I don't know the details, but there are celebrities like Kim Kardashian, like Michael B. Jordan, like Oprah, people who are invested in the future of our policies, the future of politics. And so do a call out to celebrities themselves. These people have lots of a pull when it comes to the attention that they can get from media. So if you want to bring major attention to things, you got to get some of these big time people involved. And now the question is, will they care or not? It's going to based on who you reach out to. But yeah, there's different ways to skin a cat. Gotta get creative.
Definitely.
But it is coming to the end of our 91st episode of WokeNFree. Good Lord.
Good.
It is that time again. And
bueno.
That was bueno. And we had quite an episode really discussing whether the war on drugs is a real thing. And I hope and you hope, right? We hope that you not only learn something, but were riveted and motivated to click on the links, learn more for yourself, form your opinion. If you haven't formed an opinion on this, share it in our comments. Share it on social media. Open up the dialogue, because, guys, this is going to cost our country more and more if we don't get a handle on it. So it's something really serious, just like so many other things in our life going on, right? The war on women's reproductive rights. Definitely got to actually bring that to the show, because this is really crazy, guys. Like Roe v. Wade, whoa. There's a lot going on in our world. But will I leave you hanging for what our next episode will be about? Drum roll, please.
On our next episode, we will be discussing whether the world needs country music. Make sure you follow us on social media to follow along in the conversation. Make sure you tune in next week for WokeNFree Wednesday to join the conversation at WokeNFree.com.
That one's for you, love. If you want to be a guest at the show, please submit a topic for an upcoming episode, or just share how you feel on our Contact Us page at WokeNFree.com. If you want to hit us up on social media, find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at WokeNFree. If you're interested in sponsoring an upcoming episode or talking to us about a sponsorship deal, you can do that at our Contact Us page at WokeNFree.com. That is WokeNFree.com.
If y'all didn't already subscribe, please do. Share the episode. Make sure you come back to join the conversation every Wednesday for WokeNFree Wednesdays. Remember, WokeNFree is more than a podcast. It is a way of life. Until next time, y'all.
Good Lord.